Have you ever noticed something very strange? The same brand, the same product, but over time, the quality gets worse. The price gets higher. The experience clearly declines. And the most notable thing is you haven't changed your consumption habits, but what you receive has completely changed. Most people will think, maybe it's inflation. Maybe the company is poorly managed. Maybe the market is struggling. But if you look at it from a financial perspective, a perspective that only a very small number of people truly understand, this is not random decline. This is a deliberate model, a system designed to acquire businesses, extract value as quickly as possible, and exit before the consequences appear. It sounds like business optimization, no, in finance. We call it something else, value extraction machine, and its official name is private equity. This is not a theory. The brands you once knew, once trusted from retail, restaurants, to essential services have been and are being transformed by this model. For example, Toys R Us, a retail icon that once dominated the market, but collapsed not because customers disappeared, but because its internal financial structure was distorted. And the most important thing you need to understand is, when a company is acquired under this model, its focus is no longer the customer, no longer the product, and no longer long-term growth. There is only one thing left: cash flow and the speed of extraction. In the next few minutes, I will show you how private equity really works, why declining quality is designed, and why the one who ultimately pays the price is always you, not the investors, not the fund, but the consumer, every single day. If you pay close attention, Part 1, the debt. Trick the core mechanism behind the decline. To understand why everything starts to deteriorate, you need to understand a mechanism that most consumers never see. It is not in the product, not in the employees, but in the financial structure of the company itself, in finance. This deal has a very technical name: leveraged buyout. It sounds complicated, but in reality, it is extremely simple. Imagine a company worth $100 million. A private equity fund wants to buy it. You would think they need $100 million in cash. No. They only put in about $20 million. The remaining $80 million they borrow. But here is the key point that almost no one realizes. That debt is not on them. It is transferred to the company that was just acquired. In other words, they buy the company, but the company itself must carry the debt to buy itself. This is an incredibly subtle reversal in financial structure. And from that moment on, everything starts to change. When a business suddenly carries tens, even hundreds of millions in debt, it no longer has a choice. It cannot invest long-term, improve products, build customer experience, because the number one priority now is pay interest, pay debt, survive. And to do that, the company is forced into a completely different mode, not something that might happen, but something that almost always happens in this model. Cut staff, reduce costs immediately, lower quality, increase margins, raise prices, improve cash flow quickly, stop investing because there is no time to wait. This is not poor management. This is the logical response of a system under extreme financial pressure. In economics, there is a very clear principle. What you optimize for the system becomes. When a system is forced to optimize for short-term cash flow, long-term quality will be sacrificed You walk into a store and see fewer employees, slower service products, not as good as before, you think. Maybe they're having problems. But in reality, they are operating exactly as the new system requires. A system where the customer is no longer the center experience, is no longer the priority, and time is no longer measured in years, but in financial quarters. This is something most people are never told. A company can look completely normal on the outside, but internally, it has been entirely restructured, and from that moment on, its outcome is almost already determined. In the next part, I will show you something even more shocking. How these funds still make money even as the companies they buy gradually collapse. And when you understand that, you will realize this game was never designed for the company to win. Part 2, they make money even when the business collapses. If you follow normal logic, you would think a company must grow for investors to make money. Sounds reasonable. But in this model, that logic no longer applies. Private equity does not need the company to succeed long term. They only need to extract money before everything collapses. And here is how they do it. Right after taking over, lay off employees, cut operating costs, reduce services. The result, profits on paper increase immediately. Not because the company is better, but because costs are cut to the minimum. This is profit engineering, optimizing profit through structure, not real value. This is the step most people overlook. If the company owns land buildings, valuable assets, private equity can sell everything to get cash immediately. Then the company has to lease back its own assets to continue operating. In finance, this is called sale-leaseback. Short-term, cash. Long-term, more cost burden. This is the real twist. They do not stop at the initial debt. They continue, lend the company more money, and use that money to pay themselves as dividends. Sounds unbelievable, but this is a common strategy. Dividend recapitalization, which means the company takes on more debt. The investors receive cash. Even without profit from operations, they still make money from transaction fees, advisory fees, management fees, restructuring fees. Every transaction is another extraction point. In the end, there are two scenarios. Scenario A, success, sell the company at a higher price, large profit. Scenario B, failure. The company carries too much debt, bankruptcy. But by that point, they have already collected fees, received dividends, sold assets, and exited with cash in their pockets. One typical example, Toys R Us, acquired with heavy debt, hundreds of millions in annual interest payments, unable to invest in innovation, final result, bankruptcy. Another example, Red Lobster sold assets, increased financial pressure, aggressively cut costs, and fell into crisis. This is the key point you need to remember. In this model, investor profit is not tightly linked to the company's health. These two can move in completely different directions, and that is why you see the company is still there, but the quality has disappeared. Part 3, who really pays the price? At this point, you can clearly see one thing. This system is designed to extract money up front, and it does not require the business to survive long term. So the real question is, if investors still win, then who is paying for this entire process? The answer does not lie in a single group. It spreads across the entire ecosystem, and eventually, comes back to you when debt pressure appears. The largest and easiest cost to cut is people. Employees are laid off. Those who remain must do more. Wages do not increase. Pressure increases. Efficiency may rise in the short term, but in the long term, the system begins to crack from within. This is where you start to feel it most clearly. Prices increase, portions shrink, quality declines, service gets worse. And the dangerous part is, this change happens gradually. Not large enough for you to react immediately, but long enough for you to slowly accept it as the new normal. When underperforming locations are shut down, communities lose stores. People must travel farther for essentials. Some areas become food deserts, lacking access to basic food. This is no longer just a business issue. This is a social impact. When this model enters hospitals, nursing homes, emergency services, cost-cutting is no longer just about reducing experience. It can directly affect human safety. Research from the National Bureau of Economic Research shows some healthcare facilities, after being acquired by private equity, tend to reduce staffing and increase costs. When profit becomes the top priority, quality of care is no longer the center. When private equity buys real estate, rent increases, maintenance decreases, living experience declines. You pay more, but receive less value. This is what you need to see clearly. There is no immediate big collapse. Instead, a series of small changes accumulating over time until the system is no longer what it used to be. You do not notice it on the first day. But after 1 year, 3 years, you look back and ask, why has everything gotten worse? And the answer is, it did not naturally get worse. It was optimized for a different goal. Part 4, why this system does not disappear, but becomes stronger. At this point, you might be thinking, if this model causes so many problems, why does it still exist? The answer lies in a very simple reality, but one that few people accept. This system is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. For many years, low interest rates made borrowing extremely easy. That means funds can borrow billions at low cost, acquire multiple companies at once, repeat the model continuously. When the cost of capital is cheap, expansion grows exponentially. Private equity does not only use their own money, they receive capital from pension funds, universities, large institutions, all of which are searching for returns higher than the market. The irony is, part of that money may actually be society's savings and retirement funds. Companies that are struggling need capital, need restructuring, need to be rescued. And that is exactly when they are easiest to acquire. But instead of being saved, they are placed into a structure designed for rapid extraction. When a fund acquires multiple companies in the same industry, they control supply, influence pricing, reduce real competition from the outside. You see many brands, but behind the scenes, there may be only one owner. The most dangerous part is not retail. It is when private equity enters housing, healthcare, food, childcare, things you cannot stop using. This creates a model that is almost impossible to fail. Demand always exists. Cash flow always continues. Regulations are often slow to change. Reactive. After problems occur. Meanwhile, private equity continuously adapts, constantly finds new methods, and by the time a regulation appears, they are already one step ahead. This is the most important point of the entire video. This is not a story about one company, not about one deal. This is how money operates in the modern world. You do not see it every day, but you feel it in the bills you pay, in the quality you receive, in the brands that disappear. And once you understand this, you will start seeing everything differently. You will no longer ask, why is this getting worse? But instead, who is optimizing this system? And for what purpose? If you want to understand how money really works, what is directly affecting your life, and how to recognize the patterns most people miss, follow the channel. Because in a world that is becoming more complex, understanding the system is the greatest advantage can have